Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined this week by Thad Greenson, a news editor, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, arts and features editor at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
How you doing, Dave?
David.
Pretty good. It's been a rough week, I guess, with the Supreme Court leak and the threats to all sorts of rights to privacy, among other things related to the potential overturning of Roe v. Wade. I think that's impacting people across the country. I know for social media and other communications realms, everything's lighting up. So that's a key downer this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had a protest yesterday at the courthouse, and there are actually pictures at northcoastjournal.com from the protest, and it was spontaneously happening all over the country.
Yeah, it's one of the things that people sent to me was L.A. Standoffs in L.A. between Homeland Security and protesters, and so I know it's not just us, right? It's impacting everybody across the country. So that's a big deal and something that's we'll pick up on more in the future, I'm sure. But with that in mind, let's transition to the cover story. Thad, why don't you tell us what's on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Yeah, it is not more uplifting content, so we'll have to wait for Jen for that. But the cover of this week's journal, we wanted to, May the 5th is the National Day of Awareness for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls movement. And we wanted to do something that kind of, brought awareness to that and spoke to that issue. And this is an issue that has gotten a fair amount of coverage on the North Coast. Dating back a couple of years from when the Sovereign Bodies Institute, in partnership with the Yurok tribe, released kind of a first of its kind report in 2020, detailing the full impact of this epidemic and looking at some of the causes and really trying to put some data to the issue for the first time, because missing persons cases and unsolved murders really were not tracked by the state or by the federal government by native status or tribal status. So this is an issue that we, has certainly been at the foremost of our attention for some time. And in kind of preparing for our May 5th issue and wanting to focus on that, we actually had Cutcha Rissling-Baldy, who is the chair of the Native American Studies Department at HSU, Cal Poly Humboldt, reach out to us and to pitch writing something. And so Cutcha has written about this issue before, actually, and kind of getting ready for this week's issue. I read back a column she wrote a couple years ago after that Sovereign Bodies Institute report came out that was speaking to the fact that these aren't statistics, these are names, these are real people with real families, and how that column spoke to just kind of how pervasive this issue is on the North Coast, of the missing and murdered cases in California that Sovereign Bodies has documented. 36% are from Humboldt and Del Norte counties, even though those counties make up just 2% of the nation, of the native population of the state. So this is a really acute problem locally. And she was talking about how it just really affects everybody, and everybody knows somebody, or at least knows somebody who knows somebody in native communities who has been, is missing or murdered. And then in October, Cutcha was really hit. It really hit close to home with her, and her cousin Emily Rissling went missing, and so this issue took on a new magnitude for her, and she hadn't really been ready to talk about that publicly or to kind of share what that experience has been like, and decided for a number of reasons. There's some developments in Emily's case that we'll get to in a moment, but that it was time. And so she offered to write a first person account for us of what it's been like for her as somebody who knows so much about this issue, to be hit so close to home with it, and what that experience has been like.
I do remember we spoke with Katja before when she wrote an article for the North Coast Journal. I think Jen and myself were the two. I think I don't if I remember correctly. And even that back then, I was amazed at how locally prominent this issue is, prevalent this issue is. But then to see, Katja's moving piece that's you guys published this week, I could just say I really do hope people read it because there's a lot there. It's very, very touching and humbling. But you said too that she writes about her own personal experience with her family member and gives context here. Can you tell us a little bit about this specific incident and kind of what happened recently to try to help resolve it?
Yeah, so as I said, she's writing about her cousin Emily, her younger cousin, who she used to babysit for when she was a teen, and Emily was 6 or 7, and then later in life, Emily was babysat for her kids. They have a very, very close relationship, and Emily has done many wonderful things in her life. She went to the University of Oregon. She became a cultural dance leader for the Hoopa Valley tribe, of which she's a member, and had just this life full of possibility and hope. And started, I think, about 6 months before she went missing, started having some really acute mental health issues, which Katja doesn't go into a tremendous amount of detail about in the piece, but and really, as I think is the case in a lot of these people, had became vulnerable, and there was a lot of opportunities for her to have been made safe by institutions and systems, and it seems like she fell through those cracks and was very vulnerable. And so she was last seen in mid-October near Pequon, which is a very remote area of the Yurok tribe in northeastern Humboldt County, and has not been seen or heard from since. It, as with many of these cases, it falls into a little bit of a jurisdictional morass, in that it's there's Hoopa Valley tribe has some jurisdiction because she was a member. The Yurok tribal police have some jurisdiction because it was their reservation, and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office kind of has the overarching jurisdiction. And so all three of those entities have been investigating and have conducted, and especially in the early weeks, conducted a number of kind of small scale searches, but had not found any evidence or any sign of her. And so back in February, the Associated Press ran a very good, comprehensive story about the MMIW issue, and used Emily's case as kind of a thread throughout to personalize it. And the story got a lot of attention, and including it came to the attention of a Yurok tribal member living in San Francisco, who sent it to the John Francis Foundation. And so the John Francis Foundation is a nonprofit formed by David Francis and his wife Linda in honor of their son, John, who went missing, I think, in 2006 while rock climbing. And I got to, for a piece I wrote as kind of a companion to Katja's, I got to talk to David a lot about his son's case. And his son's case was a much different situation. And they knew that he had very likely fallen rock climbing, and that he was likely deceased. But it was very important to David and Linda to recover his body and lay him to rest. And somewhat similarly to Emily's case, after a few weeks and some search attempts, law enforcement and other authorities in the area kind of decided that the search was futile, and that they didn't have any leads, and there was kind of no more that they could do, and that really wasn't enough for David and Linda. And so over the next 53 weeks, they coordinated 70 searches for John, and and worked with other volunteers and search dogs and really developed some expertise in kind of how to conduct these things. And ultimately, we're successful and recovered John's remains and were able to lay him to rest. And in the aftermath of that, some of the contacts they've developed said, you should create a foundation and you should do this for other people. You should kind of honor John's memory and all this work that you put in. By paying it forward, essentially. And so that's what they did. And the foundation does a number of things, but the function that came into play in Emily's case is they conduct and organize volunteer searches. And so they when David was contacted about Emily's case, he started researching it and got invested in it and contacted Emily's parents and spoke to them, contacted the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, Yurok Tribal Police, Hoopa Valley Tribal Police, and decided that he really wanted to do all he could to bring Emily home. And so he, or the foundation, organized a search. They got 10 search and rescue dogs from throughout the state of California and 20 volunteer handlers to come to the Yurok Reservation and conduct a 3-day search that was overseen by the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office and coordinated by them, but really had a lot of was almost entirely volunteer effort and on the back of a lot of the knowledge that the foundation had. So they searched over the weekend, ending May 2nd, and they were unsuccessful in finding Emily or any sign of her. But I know the family was very grateful that they did it. And some of the volunteers had indicated to David that they want to come back in August when the river will be lower. They think there might be a better chance of finding some evidence or some sign of Emily. And so David has indicated that they're intent on doing that. And if the Yurok tribe is willing to give it another go.
It's pretty touching, like I said. The fact that the search happened, I think, is fantastic. Unfortunately, no results that were positive, but there's a little hope in the horizon that they'll come back in August. In the two pieces this week, there's also mention of kind of next steps. With I think Katja mentions that, number one, remember that all of these people have families, and that all these families have a strong desire to hear from you. If you know anything about anyone that's missing, I think that's sort of a call to action for the individuals out there who are aware of anything to help. And then also the next thing for the future was, if you want to help support the John Francis Foundation. Any last thoughts about those types of next steps and how people can get involved?
Yeah, so many. As Katja said, so many of the families involved in these cases really believe that someone out there knows something. And whether it was a sighting that went unreported or has some insight into what the person was going through before they went missing, or in the instances where foul play is confirmed or suspected, knows something about the crime. And so there's just this real plea for those people to come forward to law enforcement, come forward to the families and share what they know. So I certainly want to echo that. As far as the foundation goes, like I said, they're going to come back in August to do another search, or they likely will. But it's also it's an all donation driven effort. They get a little bit of grant money, but it's mostly through private donations that they're able to do what they do. They charge no money to the families of the people they're searching for. So it's a pretty tremendous service. And when I spoke to David, he said, we just kind of let communities know when we're doing these searches there that the next search, the next quest to find answers for a family is kind of contingent on that support. And so I'd really urge folks to go to the John Francis Foundation website. It's johnfrancisfoundation.org. JON is the spelling, to look at the organization a little bit more about what they do, and if they can and feel it's appropriate, make a donation. And then the third thing I'll say is that there's a very complex web of issues that tie into the MMIW epidemic, and why Native women especially are so much more at risk of going missing or falling victim to violence. And there is a lot of really deep, grounded, and encouraging work being done in the Yurok tribe specifically on the issue. And so we're going to be following up with some reporting on that and some of the really interesting and really important efforts to address some of the underlying issues to make it so that this isn't a thing that we're talking about as far as searches and rescues and recoveries. But yeah.
Well, thank you, Thad. There's so much more in the article about that provides perspective, I think, and it really hits home. It's touching.
Yeah, and I can't capture the emotion of Katja that's in this piece and really embedded throughout it. I can just say that the first time I read it, I wept. I mean, it just touched me really deeply, and I'd really encourage everybody to pick it up and gain some insight into what she and the Rissling family and so many other families are going through.
And I do think I'll end up talking to Katja more, because it seems like there's a missing institution almost. There's only so much a sheriff's department can do with its limited resources. It seems like there's actually a real demand here in our region for some new institution that can kind of pick up these searches and support families, etc. So I want to thank you for sharing it with us today.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Jen, how about you? Let's pivot. I know it's tough. Let's pivot over to what's going on the arts and features beat this week.
Well, for one thing, I do want to make sure that I clue everybody into what's happening on Saturday before we get to the story I want to talk about. The Eureka Chinatown project is right now probably going crazy, getting ready for Saturday. Arts Alive night. But starting at about 3:00, they're going to have a lion dancer event at the site of what was once Chinatown in Eureka. And that is between E and F and 4th and 5th Streets. It's like a 1-block radius where Chinatown used to be. And it's just down the street from our office. And they're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony. There's going to be informational plaques put up, and there's going to be, like a sort of a dedication about the historic Chinatown. And then there are going to be Year of the Tiger events. There was supposed to be a Year of the Tiger celebration happening in February, but COVID. So it has been postponed, and now they're going to have it this weekend, and there'll be all kinds of fun stuff happening on Clark Plaza and right across from the Clark Historical Museum. And there'll be lots and lots of information, including there's a lecture at the museum at noon about the expulsion of Chinese from Eureka and all kinds of really great historical and fun, wonderful things. So check it out. I think it should turn annual. We could do lion dancers. Oh, and here's the thing that I like. So some of the businesses have made contributions and will be blessed by the lion dancers. And I believe what they're doing is they give the lion, what is it, like a head of lettuce, a head of cabbage? I can't remember. And the lion eats it and tears it up and makes a mess. So, I mean, I'm going to pull over and watch that, right?
Yeah, that sounds actually really cool. I hadn't heard about this. I'm glad you're telling us.
It's so fun. And finally, someone who eats salad the way that I do. I'm just saying.
Like Cookie Monster?
Yes, like Cookie Monster. And this week I am shockingly, I don't think anybody in the office is over it yet. I have written our Get Out column this week. Odd because I don't really go
Get Out? But this is a good one. I think this is an inspirational story here. This is great.
Is it inspirational? I don't know. You might have problems, David. I wrote about how I ended up running during the pandemic and am still trapped in the cycle of running. I ran, track as a kid and was terrible at it. And I share how, in fact, the only wins that I had from our track team were because we had a crappy unrubberized track. And so when good teams would come to our school, they wouldn't let their girls hurdle on the track because if they fell, that could end their season. But they were like, no, we'll send Jen out. And as long as I finished the lap or the race, whatever,
that's awesome.
Then I won. Tragically, this meant that I had a really great record and had to compete at this county thing where I had to run against girls who could really run. It was terrible, humiliating. Another story. There'll probably be a very sad personal story later on. But I didn't run for years because my knees were terrible. And I was kind of relieved when my knees were terrible because, you know, in the 80s and 90s, running was like the thing you did, right? So, you know, we did all kinds of crazy, like self-punishing exercise. Madonna had those crazy deltoids. We didn't know what we were doing. And I did a lot of running, but then my knees were terrible. So after a surgery and everything, I realized I really couldn't run anymore. And I was relieved because I hated it. I hated it, but I did it because I thought this is what you have to do to be healthy, right? But then during lockdown, you know, and Thad remembers this, before lockdown, I had a nurse practitioner who was supposed to be helping me with, among other things, my stress. And she suggested that I go for these meditative walks, which I dubbed my rage walks, because everybody would hear me in the office, my alarm telling me it's time for a walk. And I'd be like, damn it. Everybody'd be like, go meditate, relax. And I'd be like, oh, and I'd come back and just be like, what'd I miss? What happened? But so it was not super effective. And then when the pandemic came and lockdown came, you know, I was even more stressed out, which every article that we read, you know, during the lockdown about how to relieve stress, the first thing was like, don't look at the news. Really?
Yeah.
Number one, is that where you think stress lives, is in the news? Maybe it does, because that's where I live. So I would go on these walks and then occasionally just get so mad and so frustrated that I would start running, because otherwise I felt like I was going to explode. And after a while, I just sort of angrily, spitefully would run more and more until I was exhausted. And then that, you know, it felt better. It felt like a relief, you know, at least all that energy was out and you're kind of too tired to rage. And I remember actually, I only refer to it in the story as a friend, but it was actually Thad that I was on the phone with. And I said, I'm sorry, I've just been running, because I was sort of out of breath. And he was like, you've been running? And I said, yeah, I'm only doing it when I'm totally overwhelmed and angry and frustrated. And he's like, so like every day? And I realized, oh, he's right. And that's when I kind of came to terms with the fact that I'm running again. Oh no. And it really became my outlet. I would just rage run through my neighborhood. And, you know, when you're running, your angry face is fine. Nobody minds your angry face when you're like pounding up a hill. And then I went on a run with Linda Stansberry, another colleague. I swear to God, I might have friends outside work. It's possible, but you won't hear about any of them. So I went on a run with her when she sort of decided to do her own little 5K thing. And it was pleasant and not painful and not very fast and just a relaxing, chatty run. And I had never experienced such a thing in my life. I swear to God, I have friends. I do. But this is the first time I like ran with a friend. And it was really eye-opening to run not angry, not miserable, not just punishing myself. And yeah, I sort of, so in this story, I'm kind of talking about the difference between those kinds of runs and how I'm never really giving up my rage runs. Nothing in this week's news makes me think that rage runs are going to leave me anytime soon. When my knees finally go, I'm going to have to come up with something else. I don't know. Rage paddling. Rage cycling, something. Right?
Well, now you know why it's at least other people who are listening know why I think this is inspirational, because there's an evolution that happened here. And there's a successful outlet for stress, and it's evolved into like a something that you like and you enjoy and you share with other people, sort of.
I mean, to be clear, I'm not less stressed, but I'm not in jail either.
Right.
So I feel like that's the positive result.
Yeah. I think part of this is that you're speaking my language, because I'm one of those people that puts on, the mix of punk music and then goes uphill at top speed for the not worrying about the things that I'm stressed about. Like that's
Yeah, I mean,
that's my MO too. So I think that's why I'm taking it as such a positive. It's affirmation that other people do this too.
it's the only way I know to do it. I don't know how to like be normal and just, go exercise and feel good and healthy and empowered. And I'm probably not alone, is my guess.
Well, there's
But
cycling
that was,
out there too. So some people, if you don't want to run and like I hike because I'm a little, I don't know, I like to be out in the trails here. But people cycle also, and it's another way that's a little bit less impacting on the body. But one other thing I would add here too is that we are in a really good location for this because there are trails everywhere, and they almost all have elevation gains, and they're almost all really hard to. Now, I don't want to discourage people because there's some rolling hills, but if you want to go for that, like let's go up, up, up. There's Grasshopper Peak down in Southern Humboldt Redwood State Park. I think it's like close to. There's a fire tower up there at the top, close to like 9 miles or something. Like that, you can spend the day, half a day going uphill, and just
when Dave says
just raging.
yeah, when Dave says you, he does not mean me. He means the rest of you.
Right.
I will be on the sidewalk. Thank you.
Yeah, but there's tons of trails here, and there's like lots of cool stuff we can do all around. And the Trinities are just a little bit to the east, and that opens up. I think it's, if not many hundreds, close to thousands of miles. Like there's all, there's interconnected trail system, Pacific Crest Trail, all that stuff. We are just in a great area for the coastal trails. We've got so much. So Jen, I hope that you inspire other people the way that the way I'm feeling about your article, your story, your what's it, an admission this week? It's an admission.
You go for it, Dave. I'm like right behind you.
Okay. Well, thank you both. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Thad. This was really great. That's about all the time we have this week. So we're going to wrap up. North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up, stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you can check them out anytime. And like we said earlier, I think this week in particular, especially check it out because there's some great stuff in there. So thank you so much again, Thad and Jen. Until next week, take care.
See you next week.